I'm an 18-year-old girl at the time and had just started college, living out of state on my own for the first time. My first semester at my out-of-state college had just ended. It was May, and I was on my way home from my brother's wedding. I'm about an hour away from my current residence with a little over 3 hours left of my trip. Everything is going great, and I'm just cruising with traffic. It was a notable busy day for that particular stretch of interstate, somewhere on I-40 in Tennessee. As I said, all is well until I check my mirror. There is a truck a little further back from the side of my car in the lane next to me. I can see his headlights in my passenger side mirror. I look up because even though it's in the middle of the afternoon and super sunny out, this dude is flashing his lights at me. I try to brush it off and assume he just wants me to get into my lane, so I try moving. He stays behind me the whole time, not letting any other cars between us. He keeps flashing his lights at me and I look up at him. He waves and honks. This was a red flag, but I took it the wrong way. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's signaling for me to pull over. I hope nothing is wrong with my car. The only reason I think this is because the week before I was leaving, I had gotten a hole in my tire and had it patched. I was worried that patch had fallen out and that my tire was going flat as I traveled at 60 miles per hour. I'm freaking out about my car and plan to pull off at the next exit. Fortunately, it comes up quickly and there's a gas station with some customers visible from the exit ramp. I head there and pull up to a gas pump. Curiously, the trucker follows me off the interstate and into the same parking lot, but he parked in a designated truck zone. I get out just before he parks and walk around my car doing a quick inspection. I see him start to get out of his truck and I decide to buy gas, even though I filled up before I left. As I swipe my card to pay for my gas, the truck driver had reached my car. Lucky for me, since I was already pretty freaked out by him following me off the exit, I had my phone in hand with 911 already dialed, so I would just have to hit the call button. I left my driver door open and stayed between that and the gas hose, him standing a few feet away from the back end of my car, the hose separating us. The first thing this guy says to me is, "Aren't you a purty thing?" I'm screaming in my head now, imagining all the possible scenarios for an emergency escape. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s and looked to be at about 170 pounds. Me, 18, 125 pounds, without much muscle or fat anywhere on me. I wouldn't have been able to fight back much. Anyway, I tell him thank you. He offers to buy my gas and I decline, saying my parents gave me money. I was actually worried that he would expect something in return if I had taken his offer. He asked me questions like where I am from, where I'm going. Something went off in my head that just said, lie, 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 lie. Lie like there's no tomorrow. And so I did. Didn't tell him what college I really went to, where I was really headed, what I was doing, nothing. My gas was done pumping after 1 minute, a whole $12, and with that I told him goodbye, jumped in my car, and got out of there. I kept an eye on him as I left, making sure he didn't follow me any longer. Thankfully, he didn't, and I never saw him again. I don't know what he wanted with me that day, whether it was just to tell me how attractive I was, or if he had something much worse planned. I really regret not reporting him to the police. Since this incident, I've always been leery of truck drivers. A few months ago, I was driving back to school from visiting my parents. It's about a 2-hour drive, so I usually keep myself entertained with music. I'm a 5'3", 21-year-old female driving my dad's little old pickup truck alone in the leftmost lane of a 3-lane highway, dorking around to music on the radio. Suddenly, I notice a semi-truck going the exact same speed as me in the rightmost lane. Embarrassed for getting caught in dork mode, I stopped singing and dancing and tried to speed up so he couldn't see me anymore. He matched my speed, which ticked me off a little bit, so I looked at the driver. To my surprise, he was smiling and waving. Thrown off, I kind of chuckled and waved back. Big mistake. He moves over to the middle lane to be closer to me, and now he won't stop smiling and waving. At first I played nice, waving back a little because semi-truck beats tiny pickup truck any day, but I was mostly focusing on getting out of this guy's field of vision safely. I tried speeding up as fast as my truck would allow, about 90 miles per hour, and slowing down as suddenly as I could without endangering anyone behind me. but he would just match my speed no matter what. If there was someone coming up his lane, he'd move to the right at the last possible second and pass them before I could slow down and get behind them. He is a lot more practiced with reckless maneuvering than I do, so he has me trapped and he's using other cars to help him. The whole time he's smiling, waving, holding up the number 1 sign finger for some reason I still don't know, and rapidly losing any charm he once had. As this continues for about 5 miles, I get worried and call 911. I gave them a description of the truck: white cargo truck, black cab with some Pennsylvania company logo on it, and driver, balding middle-aged tan guy with a dirty blue t-shirt on. They advised me to pull off the emergency shoulder on the left, but I've never done that, and it looked too narrow, so I didn't feel comfortable doing that. At this point, he was passing someone else in the middle lane, and I finally had a chance to slow down and merge 2 lanes over to the rightmost lane. I started speeding past him so he couldn't trap me again, and the operator told me to take the closest service plaza about 5 miles away. She said he probably wouldn't follow me, so I could stop there for a few minutes before getting back on the highway. She told me to call if he did follow me, but again, he probably won't, so she hung up. Now he's still holding up the number 1 sign and smiling this creepy, increasingly perverted grin at me while I avoid eye contact. The service plaza is in a quarter mile, and I'm not using any turn signals, but I guess he knew what I was doing because he braked hard and merged right behind me right at the last second to join me in exiting to the service plaza. After I get my heart to start back up from the coronary it just experienced, I call 911 again. Now, the way the service plaza was set up was that semi-trucks had to use a separate lane winding to the right of the plaza that led to a parking lot behind the plaza just for big trucks. The rest of us used a smaller lane to park immediately in front of the plaza. I parked, and as I'm explaining to the new operator what's going on, I watch the semi creep around its path while the driver stares me down, smiling. I freaked. He knew where I had parked. He knew where to find me if I just stayed there. I thought maybe I could have floored it to get back on the highway, but I was afraid he would see me and follow me again. So I drove to a gas station to the left of the plaza, which has a view of the semi-truck parking lot, hoping he couldn't find me until police came. The operator transfers me to the woman who was helping me before. She informs me that they've dispatched a couple of cars, but couldn't tell me how long they would be. I see the trucker has gotten out of his truck and is heading towards me. Even though my windows are closed and my doors are locked, I'm panicking on the phone to the operator. She tells me the police should be there soon and I should be safe there, so I should sit tight while I keep her updated. I wanted to at least drive back to the parking lot I was in before, but it's a one-way entrance to the gas station, so I couldn't. I glared at the trucker and showed him my phone when he came close. He finally stopped smiling and made it look like he was going into the service plaza. I looked in my right view mirror and found him hiding behind a big white pillar in front of the plaza, staring at me. Again, I freaked out and asked the operator where the cops were and if I could leave because he's being ultra creepy. She tells me to sit tight again because they should be there any minute, so I do. Then he comes out of hiding and starts walking towards my truck. I put it in drive just in case and tell the operator what he's doing. I refuse to make eye contact with him, but I keep watching my mirrors to make sure I know where he is. The smile is back, and he starts walking circles around my truck, looking at it as if he's looking for a way to get in. I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he circled back behind me, floored it, and told the operator I'm not waiting one more second for the police. She apologized and told me the police would look for the man and talk to him if they found him, and that I should focus on getting home safely while keeping an eye out for him. I don't know if they did that or not, but I know none of that would have happened if I had my boyfriend with me. So it's good to know that not only can't I walk alone, but I also can't drive alone as a female. So every year since I've been dating my fiancé, 6 years, we take a 2-week vacation. Me and the fiancé like to switch it up. One year it's a nice resort or cruise, then the next a road trip or camping trip. So last summer, we had it in our minds to get in our SUV, load our things, the doggo, go across our state to Nevada, see a bit of Nevada, then to Northern California. We have rules on these road trips. We have to stop at every roadside attraction, and staying at crazy hotels and motels are a must. So when I discovered there was a clown museum in northern Nevada in a town called Tonopah, I knew we had to stay there. Why? Well, fiance hates clowns, like despises them, and that meant we needed to stay there. I made reservations for one night, and when we got into Tonopah, we dropped Doggo off at a friend of ours for the night. I don't remember if they allow animals, but my friend has a lot of land, and we wanted Doggo to run herself ragged and get energy out. So we pull up to this motel, and there's a ton of truckers, some bikers milling around. Fiancé can handle her own, she's a cop, so I left her in the car while I ran in to check in. Figured I would check us then we could get washed up and go to dinner. I go inside to check in, and that is when this big, burly lesbian trucker makes her way up to my fiancé. I come out after securing our room key and see her bent over by the driver's window, wearing her cut-off flannel shirt, Levi jeans, and what looked like genuine rattlesnake crap-kicker cowboy boots. I saw my fiancé wearing her. I'm trying to be nice, but I'm losing my cool face, so I clear my throat so I can get into the vehicle. She turns around, sneering as she looks me up and down, toothpick jutting out of a mouth that hadn't seen a dentist in quite a while. "You sure skinny here is satisfying your needs?" She cackled her fetid breath in my face, while my fiancé exclaimed that I satisfied her just fine. So she shrugs and saunters over to the group of other truckers. I sigh in relief and we go to our room. I'd like to say that is the last we saw of her and leave the story at that, but that's not the case. That night we were in bed, after a round of nocturnal activities. I'm smoking a cigarette, mindlessly shuffling through the few channels, and fiancé is browsing the web. There is a knock on the door. We ask who it is, and I hear someone running away from the door. I get out of bed, wrapping a towel around my waist, and stick my head out of the door. No one. After that, there wasn't any more knocks, so we went to bed, and woke up early the next day. As we were pulling out, I noticed a semi following us. I chalked it up to someone pulling out and shrugged it off. However, when the semi still follows us as we head out to my buddy's farm, we start getting creeped out. I'm about 3 minutes from turning onto my buddy's driveway. He has lots of land and a long driveway. When the semi gets so close to the back bumper, it's almost pushing us. Fiancé pulls out a phone to call the police, and I swerve into the driveway to book it up to my buddy's driveway. Meanwhile, the semi stops, the doors open, and 3 truckers get out. 2 big butch lesbians, one being my fiancé's admirer, and a big dude, easily 400 or 450 pounds. Luckily, my buddy is a crazy survivalist, gun enthusiast, and he comes out of his garage with his guns. Fiancé and I are seriously freaking out, thinking we were going to get in the middle of some crazy gunfight, when the truckers quickly get in their truck and leave. We were going to dial the police, but our friend assured us that they wouldn't be bothering us anytime soon. We quickly gathered up Doggo and got the heck out of Dodge. I've been a truck driver for quite some time now. I'd say I'm pushing 10 years this summer. That said, I've seen some weird and spooky stuff out on the road. I'm not sure I have time to type out all of them here. I have to get back on the road soon actually, but I decided I'd share a few of the most notable ones. I've seen other people talk about the same things I believe that I witnessed. The first one is actually the earliest memory I have out on the road. I was shipping some kind of statue for a collector from North Carolina to Tennessee. Not a terribly long drive, but I'd only been going at this for around 6 months at this point. It was late and the road was dark. I remember just passing the Tennessee state line when my truck died. It didn't spit and sputter, it just shut off. The radio conked out, all the needles dropped to 0. I slowly came to a stop in the middle of the freeway. Believe me, I tried to get that thing towards the shoulder, but to my horror, the steering wheel had locked up as well. Once I was stopped, I stepped out and set up a handful of cones I had in the back around the truck to keep any late-night drivers from getting into an accident. Having no idea of what could have happened, I decided on calling the highway patrol so we could take care of this the correct way. After that was done, I'd call my client and let them know I'd be late. When I pulled up my phone, though, I had no service. I was roaming. I retreated back to my truck in hopes of using my Wi-Fi hotspot and getting in contact with someone that way. No matter what I tried, I couldn't get it to connect. I was out of options. Finally, I just decided I'd stand at the back of my truck so I could wave down anyone who may come by. I'd guessed that 5 minutes passed before my patience had worn thin. I was annoyed, confused, and losing more money by the minute. But when I pulled my phone out again to check the time, all that faded away. Instead of anger, I was just confused. According to my phone, no time at all had passed. That's when a feeling of being watched fell over me. I looked all around only to be met with large fields on either side shrouded in darkness. I began hearing something though, like a low mechanical hum. Great. I thought someone must be coming down the road. Of course, I was wrong. The hum did slowly grow louder, but not from in front of me or behind me, rather from above me. Reluctantly, I looked up and saw a large gray and silver saucer in the air. There were lights around the circumference of it, with one large on the right in the middle acting as a sort of spotlight. I felt my heart rate skyrocket, and my entire vision was enveloped in white right before I fell to the ground. When I came to, there was a woman placing her jacket under my head and telling me to not move and that there was an ambulance on the way. Soon they were there, and before I knew it, I was in the hospital getting checked out. I knew I couldn't tell them about the thing I had seen in the sky. They'd think I was nuts. Instead, I told them my truck malfunctioned, and when I got out to check it, I suffered a dizzy spell and must have passed out. They took it for truth, and after I was given a clean bill of health, I was sent home. My truck was back in working order the following morning, and the company I drive for let someone take the delivery for me. We just split the pay. Despite all of the mysteries that I had been through, it was a fair deal, I suppose. This next story is for all you ghost hunters out there and takes place about 3 years after the first story. It's no secret that rest stops are basically the cesspool of highway travel. I've never seen one that didn't have a dead rat, a glory hole, or some type of undefinable stain on the walls. The one in this story, though, had all that and more. I walked in holding my breath as I did so. I knew there was no good smell in these places. I took to a urinal so I could have a fairly quick escape in case someone tried something funny. I finished up and went to scrub my hands clean. When I looked up in the mirror, I noticed someone standing at the same urinal I had just been at. It struck me as odd, seeing as I was the only one who was in there and I didn't hear or see anyone walk in. The guy looked dirty, and my first thought was that he was a hitchhiker. I'd already come up with an excuse as to why I couldn't take him with me in case he asked. I'm all for helping people out, but this guy looked to be up to no good. I shut off the water and headed over for some paper towels. When I turned back, though, the guy was gone. I looked all around, even under the stalls, but he was nowhere to be seen. There was no way he made it out of the door without being seen. It's right beside the paper towel dispenser. When I turned back towards the door to leave, I got the scare of a lifetime. The guy I'd seen in the mirror was right in front of me, but now I saw his face. It was battered, bloodied, and looked to be covered in mud. To my dismay, when I jumped back, I stepped in a puddle of something, lost my footing, and went straight to the ground. I managed to catch myself putting my hand in another undefinable liquid. I checked my hand to make sure it wasn't feces or blood, and luckily it wasn't, most likely urine. Then I looked back up towards the guy I had just seen, and he was gone. It was like he was there 1 second and gone the next. I don't know for a fact, but I felt like he had to have been a ghost or some kind of spirit. The door on that rest stop was heavy and rusty. The squeak of that thing could be heard from the highway. I would have known if he tried to slip out of there. The two previous stories my wife both know about. These two, however, have never left my mind. You all should feel lucky. The first takes place around the 5-year mark, so not too long after my encounter with the man at the rest stop. I was heading up to Michigan to drop something off when I noticed a man on the side of the road. The roads were fairly quiet that night, so I could see why he would go unnoticed. He didn't have his thumb out or anything. He was slumped over the guardrail. I'd say I was about 100 yards from him and could make out a hoodie and some type of liquid glistening from the light from the headlights. I had all intentions of trying to pull over somewhere and help him, but as I approached, his body lifted up and sort of dragged itself the rest of the way over the rail. It's hard to explain how unnatural it looked. His body moved like it had no bones. Before I knew it, he was making his way straight into the road. I blew my horn, rolled the windows down, and screamed, but he just stood there directly in the line of fire. A split second passed where I knew I would be responsible for someone's death, that I would take someone out of someone else's life forever. I tried to stop, but even as the truck slowed, I knew I was going to collide with this poor soul. As he disappeared from my sight, my eyes slammed shut, anticipating the impact, but it never came. I told myself he'd jumped out of the way and was okay, that I had nothing to worry about because he was obviously not hurt, aside from whatever injury he'd sustained that put him in the position he was in. The truck finally came to a stop, and I immediately jumped out to see if he was okay. Man, I looked all over for that guy, but he was nowhere to be seen. I walked up and down the highway for at least half an hour, calling out and asking if he was all right. I looked by the guardrail as well, but it was pointless. This guy was nowhere to be seen. I still don't know where he could have went. Now, recently I thought my bouts with the paranormal were finally over, but I'll end with one that happened just a couple of weeks ago. This one isn't nearly as scary as the others in my opinion, but it's still a good one. It's common knowledge that truck drivers often have CB radios installed. They're usually used, or at least in my case, to communicate with other drivers and let them know of any traffic accidents and road delays. Us drivers like to look out for each other. This night in particular, I was having a full-on conversation with someone. I guess they were around 10 miles ahead of me at the time, and he was giving me a little heads up about a rollover that was being cleaned up. A rollover being a car that careened off the road and flipped. I thanked him and continued on with the conversation. He interrupted me at one point though. His voice had changed from passive and bored to scared and alert. He explained that he had just pulled over at a rest stop, one that I was about 8 miles from and had just seen a sign for, and there was something walking around out there. He said he had planned on sleeping after being on the road for 8 hours with no break, but now he was afraid to get out or even try to go to sleep. I need to keep this thing in sight, he said. That really freaked me out. I told him to just chill out. I'd be there soon and we could take shifts if that made him feel better. He said sure, but then he began describing it. According to him, it looked almost human. Its head was too small and its body too long. It was completely naked, but he couldn't see any genitals. The skin that covered it was a light gray, seemed wet, and was stretched tightly around its body, leading to extreme definition around the bones. It looked around the rest stop, seemingly sniffing for some type of meal. When it found one, my radio buddy got off long enough to vomit. When he came back, he said the thing ripped the head from a small rabbit and went about devouring it basically whole. Finally, I made it to the rest stop and tried to park as quickly as I could. I looked all across the tree line for this thing that my radio friend had described to me, but I couldn't see it anywhere. Then out of nowhere, I heard 2 gunshots fire out. I looked all around again and saw a driver, assumingly the one that I had been speaking to, firing at something that was now making off into the woods. The way it ran was similar to a quadruped, but its gait was off. I'm not sure how to explain it. I jumped out of the truck and ran over to the guy, making sure to make myself known. We met up and explained that he had finally given in and decided to try to make it to the bathroom. As he was coming out, this thing was standing a few feet from the door and hissed at him when he had stepped out. As soon as it started coming toward him, he pulled out his 9mm and fired at it. I believe it landed somewhere near its lung, according to him. The small trail of black, inky-like liquid leading to the woods solidified that. Not long after that, we took to staying in our trucks and sleeping in shifts to make sure that if the thing were to come back, we could warn the other. We made it through the rest of the night without incident. That's another story where I'm left totally confused. I have never seen something like what he had described. I'm not aware of any kind of animal who has black blood. The whole situation was incredibly strange. That driver and I actually stayed in contact for a short amount of time after that, but we eventually went our separate ways. Our paths still cross here and there though. We used those moments to reminisce and try to get an idea of what we had to deal with that night. Well, I've got to get back on the road. I hope you guys and gals get a kick out of some of these. I still haven't made sense as to why I'm so attracted to the paranormal, or rather, why it's so attracted to me. But it was a lot of fun to finally share them with someone other than my wife. I'm sure she gets tired of hearing about them and the nightmares they cause. Hey friends, thanks for listening. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/letsreadofficial, and give and receive feedback from the community. And be sure to check out my Choose Your Own Path horror game on the iOS and Android App Store, and grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon. Links in the description. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.